It is. It's a fun holiday. It's one of those holidays where you don't just sit on the deck of the boat cooking under the sun. This is one of those holidays where you actively participate in the journey. It's more about the journey than the destination. And I know this sounds like such a cliche, but it's nowhere more true than this type of holiday.
Welcome to the Budget-Minded Traveler podcast, your source for the everyday inspiration and practical tips that make international travel accessible to everyone. Hi guys, welcome back to the Budget-Minded Traveler podcast. We're about to start our last episode in this series about unconventional modes of transportation in travel. And I'm super excited to explore today's topic, which is sailing. But before we start with that, I want to remind you guys, because I haven't in a while, that I lead group trips. In fact, we just got back from hiking the Jordan Trail and seeing Petra and floating in the Dead Sea in Jordan, of course. And I have another trip to Patagonia, the ultimate itinerary, going this fall, and there are only 3 spots left. So be sure to check out travelingjackie.com/trips to stay in the loop for adventures I'm organizing, especially if you like hiking and the outdoors. And go to travelingjackie.com/Patagonia if you want to get straight on that Patagonia itinerary. And don't wait, because it is going to fill up. Okay, so fun fact about today's guest. His name is Costas, and he's originally from Greece. But I actually met him and his travel partner in El Chalten, Argentina, which is way deep in Patagonia, where Fitzroy is, if you know what I'm talking about. We'll be going there on my group trip, by the way. But we all happened to be sitting at the same table in a chocolate shop, my favorite chocolate shop. This is the best ever chocolate shop, seriously. And we struck up a conversation, and before we knew it, we were meeting up for beers and steak and sharing stories, and pretty much became immediate friends. This is what happens when you travel. And now here we are, months later, getting to come back together to talk about a subject very dear to him, sailing. So let's get to it. This episode is brought to you by biketours.com. They offer over 200 bike tours in 40 countries throughout Europe and make the selecting and booking process super simple. Plus, they are real people passionate about cycling themselves who are available to help with any questions you might have along the way. Week-long packages start at just $700, and you'll find tours for all ages, interests, and abilities, from solo cycling to families and groups. Just one warning for you. Do not go to this website while you are at work. You run the risk of daydreaming about island hopping in Croatia, or wine tasting along the Danube River, or eating all the gelato in Italy. Check out biketours.com to view tours, or go to travelingjackie.com/bike tours to learn more about my personal experiences cycling with them. We're so grateful to Osprey Packs for partnering with us and supporting the podcast, so please stay tuned for more about them later on. I have an opportunity for you to join me in real life for some real travel. Here's the latest Jump Adventures update. We are going to Greece for a bike and boat island hopping adventure this May 9th to 16th, 2025, and we still have space left. Check out jumpadventures.com to learn more and book now. We're going to have a yacht all to ourselves with ensuite cabins on board, so you get to sleep in the same bed every night as we start in Athens and make our way west toward the island of Corfu. You'll have your own bike for the week, e-bike if you want one, for cycling the islands as we go, in between meals crafted by our private chef on board, and all the relaxing you want to do on the top deck under the Mediterranean sun. These bike and boat adventures are our most carefree and relaxed trips. All you have to do is say yes and show up, and there's still space. Head over to jumpadventures.com to grab your spot now, and we'll see you there. So, Costas.
Hi.
Hi. I'd like to extend an official welcome to you to the show. It's so nice to talk to you again.
It's great to be here. Over a distance, but not too far away.
You know what? We're in the same time zone, and that is kind of amazing.
Yeah. It's a huge change from where you were a couple of months ago when we left you.
Exactly.
Frozen lands of Patagonia.
Yeah, where we both were. Yes. Which I think it's kind of funny that we were both there and now we're both here, except I'm in Italy and you're in Malta.
Which is not that far from Italy, actually. So in theory, we're on the same kind of, straight line. I can almost see you from here.
Yeah,
almost.
just wave. Just wave.
Hi.
But yeah, thanks so much for taking the time to be here, because you have quite an interesting, unique way of traveling that I am super interested in sharing with my audience, my listeners today, and that is sailing. And I've had several friends who've done this over the years. I've never gone with them on these kind of group sailing trips. The only time I've ever done it was with Bus About in Croatia, which was so much fun. But I have to say, there wasn't even a sail on the sailboat. It was like a motor.
I was going to say slightly different priorities.
Yeah, it was so different. But it was still a week on a boat, and I really loved it. And I really was not sure if I was going to love it. And
yeah.
So this type of travel, I guess, this alternative transportation, as opposed to taking buses or hitchhiking or driving or anything, really interests me. And so I just want to ask you to share some stories and ask you some questions about how the life of a sailing traveler kind of goes. So you are currently planning a trip for this summer, right?
That's right. Yeah, we're planning on sailing the Greek islands again. I'm myself from Greece, and even though I don't live there, but I use every opportunity to go back and sail during the summer. And sailing is one of those activities that is preferably done with company. I mean, there's a lot of people who are very comfortable, circumnavigating the world by themselves. But
or one 16-year-old.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But I mean, it's so much more fun doing it with friends. And it's one of those things that can actually really add a lot of value to a friendship and a lot of experiences and stories. So I always try to bring a bunch of people together and put something together as a holiday.
Yeah.
I'm in the process of putting one of those trips together now for the end of July. So kind of the middle of the summer season in Greece.
Yeah. Do you do like one trip a summer, or what's
well, it started off like that purely for logistical reasons. I mean, it was access to boats and the amount of people I knew and the ease with confidence I had. The ease with which I could get boats was a little bit less. It was a little bit less easy back then when I first started, and also there was no Facebook when I first started. Trying to organize people through some kind of group messaging platform was a bit harder. But as things have become a little bit more accessible, as is the case with all sorts of tourist activities, it's become easier and easier to do this more regularly. Although at the end of the day, no one wants to go out with terrible weather. So the summer is really the time when you want to be out in the boat.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, we try to generally squeeze at least, 2 or 3 trips in the summer, somewhere in the Mediterranean.
Wow, that's a lot. Okay.
Since I've relocated to Malta, it's become a lot easier to go out on weekends.
On the weekend, okay. So you do like short trips too, and just kind of, of course you do, right?
Kind of spontaneously get a bunch of people together, load them up on a boat, and go out and drop anchor on a bay for the night and have a bar weekend, that sort of thing.
It's kind of like how those of us who live in the mountains will go out backpacking overnight and go camping. You just take a boat and go find some amazing tropical island. Stay there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Except there's no risk of sinking on a mountain, whereas you'll be surprised the number of people I brought along with me. That is always a risk with these guys, but it's fun, and it's one of these activities that I've been trying to put together more and more, so in a more kind of organized way, but not really try to plan too much ahead. Because that's the whole point with having a boat, or having access to a boat, I should say. You just get on it and, as long as the weather's cooperating, you can go pretty much anywhere you like and do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm. How long have you been doing this?
This started back in 2001 or 2000, somewhere there. So it's almost 20 years. And I come from a country that's got a very long history with sailing and boats in general and the sea.
Did we say out loud yet that you're from Greece? I don't know if we mentioned that.
Yeah. So I'm from there, and I was always interested in doing something like this, but I never really got around to it. And then I used to live in London. I was hanging out with a couple of Danish guys over there, and they were like, "Hey, you're from Greece. Why? How come we've never gone sailing over there?" I know nothing about sailing.
Because you're from Greece, you should automatically know about sailing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you're from Sweden, you should be skiing or, whatever.
Yeah.
But it just hadn't occurred to me. And it was one of those things that I always thought it's one of those things that people in the know do. It's an expensive thing to do. It's, you see all this luxury yachts, and it's like, yeah, I'm nowhere close to doing that. I wouldn't even know where to begin from, who to ask, and so on. These guys have to be sailors. They were doing it a lot back home in Denmark, and so I put them in touch with a company, managed to get a yacht. We didn't have to bother finding a skipper. These guys could skipper it themselves.
Okay.
So next thing you know, I'm a passenger on a boat, and we're having the time of our lives up on the Ionian Sea, which is on the northwestern side of Greece.
Mm-hmm.
Or I should say western, more or less, central western side of Greece. Heading north up to islands like Corfu and Lefkas, and there's beautiful places. And just really having the time of our lives. I thought, wow, this is what it's all about. Let's do this again. So I use that as an excuse to really explore the islands. We've got around 2,500 islands in this country, and there's no shortage of coastline. It's one of the longest coastlines in the world, and there's so much going on there. A lot of varied landscapes, and a boat is one of the best ways to see the islands. You get access to places that you'd never normally come across.
Yeah, and you can come and go as you'd like, and
well, this is one of those nice things about Greece, is that for better or for worse, it hasn't really got many organized marinas. So actually traveling around the Greek islands, once you've got access to the boat and you've sorted that expense out, is very, very, very cheap. There's facilities in all of the islands that you're likely to come across. And if there isn't one here, there'll be another one very close by. So you're never far away from being able to access food or water or all of these essentials when you're traveling. There's a lot of variety,
Question from the newbie. When you say because there aren't marinas, that once you get the boat sailing around Greece is very cheap, so because you pay to dock at the marinas?
That's right. So if you compare, let's take Italy, for example, and a place that I'm actually researching, doing a trip at, which is beautiful archipelago of Sardinia, and also Corsica. I've been thinking about visiting. And they're lovely places, both of them. But, you could come across marinas there that ask for anything between 50 to 250 euros a night.
Oh,
wow. That's for a relatively small boat that would carry, 8 people. Croatia also, it's the same story there. You've got marinas that charge upwards of 200 euros for an evening. And, sure enough, they provide security. They'll give you Wi-Fi, washing facilities and showers and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you've got most of what you need on the boat. You really just need a place to berth and be able to hop off and visit the town that you're visiting.
Right. I liken this to like an RV pulling up to an RV campground or something and having to pay to...
It's exactly that.
Yeah.
It's exactly that. Except RV grounds don't really charge a fortune. That's really expensive. And the problem is that all these popular places, once you get an organized marina, if it is a popular place, you'll get a lot of expensive yachts with people that have a lot of money. So they bump the price up. These people can justify charging that kind of money. I was in Italy in a place called Tropea, which is lovely. It's up towards the region of just north of Reggio Calabria. Really, really nice spot. It's a lot of history there, castles and all sorts of things like that, which are very close to as well from where you are. And at the same time, these guys were asking, again, somewhere between 80 to 250 euros a night just to be able to dock. So the difference with Greece is that Greece doesn't really have all these organized marinas all over the place. It has some of them in some of the islands. But the vast majority of places, you'll be docking in the same harbor that little fishing boats and ferries and all, the general, harbor that the island will have. So you'll be squeezing yourself in there. The bad news there is that it is a bit chaotic, especially in the high season. You've got to drop anchor inside a harbor, which is not the easiest thing. If you've got a ton of other anchors near you, you can pick something up, as we have repeatedly done in the past, and then be stuck there. Or with it being very chaotic and having to maneuver inside a closed harbor, you could very well end up, bumping your boat into somebody else's boat or damaging it. There's all the noise that's associated with being in a busy harbor with all the tavernas and bars right on it. There's not really much security, so you lock your boat, you go away, and you hope that no one's going to break in. The islands there are generally safe, but again, there's no security, there's nothing. But at the same time, it's really, really nice, and it's also a way to really experience the island because you generally dock directly in front of all the action. So you hop off your boat, and there you are. You can eat food, beautiful, nice restaurants, and drink in all the bars, and visit all the local little shops and everything. You don't even have to to take 2 steps to see that.
Yeah, it's like a front row parking. Literally.
Yeah.
Everyone is there to look in your direction. So
yes. Yes, I mean it's funny we're talking about this because a lot of friends always ask me. One of the most popular islands back in Greece is Santorini, obviously, and everyone's like, "Oh, why don't we visit Santorini with a sailing boat? How come we've never gone there?" And the reality is, this place. Well, first of all, Santorini is all about the views from above, not from below. So really, I mean, having a boat isn't going to add that much to the experience. Second, it has a tiny, tiny little marina, and it's busy. Like you have to go there, and you could wait an entire day before you can get in. Gets a lot of swell from the cruise ships that dock near there. So it's not a very nice place to dock. And so you'll have the same problem in all the other very popular places where there are marinas, that it gets very busy. You'll have to get in very early, and it might not necessarily be close to all the action either. As is the case with Mykonos, for example, another very popular island. The marina is kind of in the middle of nowhere, whereas all the action is in the central sort of little port town. Of course, you can't access those sailing boats, but it's got its pluses and its minuses. It's a bit more, you'd compare it to wild camping versus camping in an organized spot.
Yeah. So when you have done these trips, this is going to vary so much. But I mean, how do you go about getting a boat? And do you always have someone who, did you get your own, are you a skipper now?
Yes, I am.
You are. So you can always do it.
Yes. So it's actually a lot more straightforward, especially nowadays with the internet, than it used to be. And I'm bringing up the internet because I've transitioned from the period of where the biggest luxury you had at your disposal to book anything was email, to it was faxes back then and phone calls abroad and everything, to booking it all online and be done with it without ever meeting the person you're getting the boat from. So how do you do it? First of all, it's generally relatively straightforward in places where sailing is popular to be able to rent a boat, and be able to find a boat fairly easily. So I'll put, in Europe, that would be Greece, Turkey, Croatia, Italy, and the prices tend to be more or less the same as well.
What do you actually do to find it? Like, do you just go on Google and say sailboats for rent in X location or whatever?
Exactly. So you can Google it. You can go to, if you happen to live in a country that has a sail tourism industry, there are a few companies that have a worldwide presence, much like tour operators have a worldwide presence, or at least in several countries. So a lot of times you'll be able, if you're lucky enough to live in one of those countries, you'll be able to pop into one of those offices and they can arrange it for you in connection to the company abroad. But otherwise, you just Google it, come across different agencies, and then shop around exactly like you would when trying to rent a car. It's no different.
Okay.
You call them up. They often have the lists published online. You ring them up and they say, hey, or you email them and say, I want a yacht for that many people for that time period. What's it going to cost me without the extras and so on? The good thing, I mean, Greece has just gone through a massive financial crisis, which has brought one good thing as far as the tourism industry goes, in that the sailing tourism industry, in that there's now an abundance of yachts from owners who had bought them and intended to run them as a business, were are now desperate to bring in some income through those. So there's more yachts out there, especially for very popular destinations, than there is demand. So the prices have dropped sharply. And the same is happening all around the world. There's now good yachts that are just sitting there. The seasons are, 3 to 4 months long. If you try to avoid sort of the smack in the middle of the season and go towards the edges, September or early June, you'll be able to get a lot of boat for relatively little money. And you just Google around, shop around, and then most agencies will offer you the option of either chartering the boat as bareboat. So that means you just get the boat, you have to skipper it yourself.
Did you say, what was the term you used for that?
It's called bareboat, as in
bareboat.
Yeah.
Just the boat. Okay.
Just the boat, literally.
Yeah.
Or they can supply you with a skipper. The going rate in Europe right now is around €1,000 a week for the skipper.
Okay. But I mean, if you're a group of friends and you want to take a sailing trip and no one is a skipper, then you can rent a skipper.
you rent a guy or a girl, and there's huge. You know what? I was very hesitant at the beginning when I kind of looked into this, because I thought, well, you're bringing a stranger into what is effectively a box in the middle of the sea, and will these people be nice? Will they be a little bit awkward having another person kind of sleeping just a couple of meters away from you? And what sort of people are they? But the vast majority of skippers I've met that do this professionally are amazing people. They'll only add to the fun. And they have one huge advantage that you yourself won't be able to provide if you're just going out and skippering it yourself in unknown waters, unfamiliar waters, which is that they know the area. They know all the best spots to go swimming. They know the best spots and the prevailing conditions for the weather, on where it's safe to moor at night. They know the best restaurants. They're generally, you're not just hiring a skipper, you're hiring a local tour guide, effectively.
Exactly.
This guy's doing it.
Exactly. Yeah. Sounds just like having those are all the beauties of having a tour guide when I travel somewhere. I love having a guide. They're so fun most of the time, and they're so knowledgeable. It really adds to the experience. This sounds like the same thing.
It does, and it only adds a little bit to the cost. So perhaps, since I mentioned how you go about booking one, I should probably talk a little bit about pricing. Since I found that it doesn't really vary all that much around the world, and I include even the Caribbean, in relation to Europe and the prices. So you'd be looking to pay for, say, a boat that would sleep, say, between 6 to 8 people. A ballpark figure of around, in Europe, it'd be about €2,500 for the boat itself.
Okay.
So something in the region of, say, 46 feet, something like that. That would sleep between 6 to 8 people, depending on the configuration. You'd be looking to pay about €2,500 just for the boat itself, with the maximum amount of insurance you can get. Then on top of that, you've got the skipper, which is another €1,000. So generally, you'd be looking at about €3,500 I would say that's a pretty safe amount to budget for a yacht that can sleep from anything from 6 to 10 people. You may get lucky and get a boat that sleeps 10 people for about €3,500 with a skipper. It's less common. I'd say then you're looking probably at about 4 to 4.5. What's that in dollars? About €3,500, about what, $4,300 or something.
Oh, don't ask me about math.
Yeah, it's about something. It's something like that. So you've got about, let's just round it up down to $4,000 divided by 8. It's not, it's about $500 for a week.
Yeah, that's so cheap.
That includes a skipper.
That includes the skipper. That's surprising. I mean, I know that's not all of that's just the boat and the skipper. Sure. It's not your food. It's not your docking, all of that. Yeah. But that's a great base.
The beauty of hiring a skipper on top of everything else is the peace of mind, because, and it's quite important, this one, if you rent a boat by yourself, you're entirely liable for anything that happens to this boat. So if you run it aground, if you damage it while you're docking, or you do anything like that, you have to pay the premium for the insurance. If you get the skipper, the responsibility falls with the skipper. So you don't have to worry about any of that. If he tears a sail, if he chips a little bit of the hull, or I don't know what, you don't have to worry about this. Obviously, if you set the boat on fire because, you cooked eggs and forgot to turn the stove off or something, that's another issue. But generally, that's an added bonus there, that when you get a skipper, you actually got less of a headache of what could possibly go wrong. You're less tense throughout the trip, which is great. That would include insurance, and there's generally a deposit that you pay up front, which is refundable at the end of the trip. Then after that, your main expenses, I would say, as far as obviously flights to try and get to the place. And then you've got the food and the drinks. But the good thing with food and drinks is that you, obviously on the boat, you share, or you tend to share anyway. No one's going to buy their own food and cook in turn.
Yeah, right.
You've got, all these boats will have a fully equipped kitchen with an oven and a stove and a fridge and a freezer and everything. So you've got the possibility, to live for an entire week without ever needing to step on land if you plan ahead carefully. But even if you run out of food, and as we do every time, you can just hop off the boat on an island for a couple of hours, stock up, and then back, off you go again. So you're pretty
probably more important to be able to restock on liquor. Let's be honest.
Oh, gotcha. And it doesn't. The golden rule here is this: no matter how much you think you bought, and no matter how well prepared you think you are, you will run out within the first 2 days. Period. This is one thing that has never, ever changed. It doesn't matter. People's like, just get a little bit more this year. Oh, just a little bit more. Yeah, we'll be fine. We're fine. Never. You always run out. It starts with a beer, and then you get down to, to the spirits. And then at the end, it's the odd bottle, the odd souvenir bottle that someone bought at the airport on their way in, which no one knows what it tastes like. That's the only thing you've got. You can survive the day. So this is where that's it.
This is where it's also good to have the skipper so that they can move the boat in the morning when you need to.
Well, absolutely. I mean, who wants to wake up crappy o'clock in the morning and have to plan ferrying 10 people around between islands, possibly with stormy seas and the hangover from hell? On the plus side, this is the one trip when you can literally roll off your bed and into the water. So there's major advantages there. I mean, it's that goes a long way. It raises the dead, literally. I mean, it's yeah.
That's so. Where all have you gone? What countries have you done this in with your friends?
So I've sailed in obviously in Greece, several islands, all sorts of different corners there. I've sailed in Australia in the Whitsundays, Islands, which is lovely.
Oh, it sounds amazing. Photos of that place blow my mind. They blow my mind.
It's a lovely,
and it has the coolest name ever, the Whitsundays. I just want to go there to say I've been to the Whitsundays.
Just a mouthful. Yes. No, it's beautiful. It's relatively safe archipelago as well, and it's there's concerns with a lot of shallows and reefs and obviously tide. Plus, you have to be careful because there's a lot of it is marine park, so you can't. I mean, if you're on a ground there, good luck to you. But be really careful where you venture, and there's a lot of restrictions. You obviously can't just go out on the beach and have a barbecue because this is a national park and they'll kill you if they catch you. There's also a lot of dangers in the water, such as sharks and jellyfish and other beauties, which you don't really have in the Mediterranean. That's one of those beautiful things about this place, that you can literally stop in the middle of absolute nowhere. Yes, we have sharks, but if you see a shark in the Mediterranean, let us know. You're more likely to see very playful dolphins, and they're an absolute beauty to look at. We saw one just last weekend as it goes. It just jumped right in front of us. We're over in Greece for a regatta, and we're coming back, and it just popped out on us, said hello, and went back in.
Aww.
So there's obviously there's advantages and disadvantages to all of these places. But in a place like Greece or Croatia or Italy or anywhere like that, you can stop literally in the middle of nowhere, jump in the sea, come back out, and continue your journey if you got too hot, which is not encouraged in a place like Australia.
Okay.
Then there's I'd love to go to the British Virgin Islands. I haven't done it yet. It's a very easy destination apparently to sail in, and it's kind of a must do. I just haven't gotten around to it. Obviously sailed in Malta. God, where else? I'm sure I'm forgetting something. Did I mention Croatia? Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't.
Italy and Croatia. Have you not done the Caribbean?
But the UK. No, I haven't done any parts of the Caribbean yet. And it is very high on the list, both the Caribbean and South America as well. I know Colombia and those places are beautiful to sail at. But that will happen. We're actually thinking of putting a trip together to the BVIs, the Virgin Islands, the British Virgin Islands in December, which is the season to go. It's, again, the biggest problem you'll have with a sailing trip, as you're probably starting to realize by now, is not the money. It's not the organization, because especially if you get a skipper, you literally all you have to do is turn up. And as long as you're capable of buying food in a supermarket, that's pretty much all you need. One of the biggest problems is finding the people and aligning everyone's schedule to be able to put between 6 to 10 people together on a boat for the same period.
Yep.
And then making sure that these people will all get their ass from point A to point B on time and not miss the flights. Believe me, that is done. We've had situations where we had to pick people up in the middle of the sea because they missed their flight. Now we're 2 islands away from where they arrived, 2 days away from that point. No. So, we had to get inventive and try and get the Coast Guard to ferry them over on little dinghies and pick them up outside rocks in the middle of absolute nowhere.
That's why they call it adventure.
It is.
We'll come right back to that. Let's take a moment now to thank our wonderful show sponsors. Osprey is the market leader in technical outdoor, travel, and everyday packs. And I've personally used Osprey packs since 2015. My favorites are the Fairview Trek 50 for multi-day hikes, the Cirrus 24 for day hikes, the Transporter Rolling Duffel 60, which is my trusty check luggage for faraway adventures, and of course, the countless packing cubes I use to organize everything that goes in them. We are proud to support each other on the podcast and beyond. We love getting outside and we want to see more people outdoors. So find out more and join us at osprey.com.
An adventure, and the adventure often begins on day 0. So before it's actually started. Yeah. So yeah, it's one of those. So I would say, in general, it's a special kind of holiday. This is not your standard. Let's all go to some beach resort and book a hotel or an Airbnb somewhere and just head out and have fun at the bars. It takes a certain type of people, to a certain type of character that plays well with this whole scenario, which is the more laid back person, the person that's generally quite okay, not having any particular plan, not really caring about where they're going to wake up. And when I say where they're going to wake up, I don't mean whose room, but what island. Although the room is also...
Which bunk?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It is, you think that wouldn't be the case, but it is. It's often a problem, intentionally or unintentionally. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you really need to make sure that the people you bring along are very laid back. They're not fussy. They're not trying to one up everyone else or be the loudest person or the more try to come across as try to seek too much attention. Because the reality is you're sharing a very, very close space with another 6 to 10 people. So you only need someone to be a little bit annoying, and that amplifies on a boat.
Yeah.
And they become mega annoying, and then you end up with trouble. You can't get rid of them within a week.
When we were in Patagonia, and I was asking you about this, you described 3 types of people. Will you say that again? Will you describe those 3 people again?
Yeah, so the A's, the B's, and the C's, as I say. So
that's right.
It's nothing to do with one being better than the other. It's all to do with the types of personalities you bring on board. And I think it's very important to know this in advance, know a little bit about your people. And one thing I would never do, I know others have done it, is go out on Facebook and say, hey, everybody, who wants to go sailing? Don't. I've never ever done this, and I never will. You may have a lot of lovely friends that they're fantastic going out for a drink and catching up, but you should absolutely think twice about inviting them on a sailing trip, because there are some people who are, the loud ones, the soul of the party, the entertainers, the ones that will take a funeral and entertain everyone in it. And these are the A's, as I call them. These are the people you absolutely must have on the trip, but you cannot have too many of those on the boat because it will just descend into chaos. And oftentimes the very strong personalities, one will clash with another and they'll try to one-up each other. And, it can happen. Then there's the B's, which are the people that are fun. They'll jump into the fun and they'll add to it and they'll bring their own little personal character, but they're also quite content with just, chilling out and going with the flow. And then there's the C's, who are the sorts of people that are generally a little bit more quiet. They'll add to the party, but they won't on their own contribute to an all-out fun trip just by themselves. And you need a bit of everything. So you need a few A's, you need a good amount of equal distribution sort of B's, and the rest can all be C's. And again, it's not about one being better than the other. Everyone has their spot on a boat, but just make sure you're not trying to put, especially if you're going on a flotilla, like if you're bringing more than one yacht along, you have to be careful not to put all the party animals on one boat and then all the quiet ones on the other, because then you'll be having 2 very different types of holidays.
You'll have one boat that sinks and then the other one without any parties.
Sitting there filming them. So yeah, absolutely. And it has happened. It has happened before, and it's always a little bit. The trouble is that obviously going as a flotilla, you generally dock along each other, and it's all nice and good during the day. But at night, when one boat is going absolutely crazy with the party and jumping and screaming, the others just want to have a nice quiet dinner and have a bit of watch the sunset and look at the stars. Then you're talking about a very different type of holiday, and yet you force these 2 groups of people to be together. So it's very, and it happens more often than you'd like it to happen. So yeah, I'm very aware of this when I try to plan my trips. And I don't always get it right. It's one of those things that you it varies every year.
Yeah. Well, also if you're at the mercy of schedules and who can afford it, who can make it work, who can get there on time.
Absolutely. And you've also got to make sure you bring people along, the sharing types. They don't mind chipping in, so you can all kind of share the food in a taverna, or you split the fuel and you split everything. I've had situations where I've brought 20-person crews. We've all gone out and shared meals at the restaurant. And then I had someone come over to me and say, well, I didn't eat the salad. So, you've just shared food with 20 other people. You've eaten and drunk as much as you possibly could. And now you're picking how many olives you've had out of a salad so you can save a couple of euros. So again, it's nice to be frugal. It's good, it's all nice and good. I understand everyone's got, finances to look after, but whatever you think your budget's going to be, first of all, if you're organizing the trip, try to research that. Try to find out, okay, the fuel with a sailing trip, luckily, is not a big factor. That's also one of the bonuses of sailing, not motoring around islands. For example, in Greece, we have a lot of islands and quite big distance between them if you wish to do that. So we've had lengthy trips where the fuel cost didn't even exceed 150 to 100 euros for an entire week. So that's like 20 euros each for the week.
Wow, yeah.
That's not a lot of money. No. So the fuel is generally not a factor. And most countries have, more or less the same price in fuel or cheaper than in Europe. So you'll be okay. Food, sharing food, and especially sharing the alcohol can be an issue. So make sure you know that the people that are coming along are okay with sharing, or especially if you've got people with like vegetarians or vegans or whatever, and you have to cater for them on a boat where everyone else is eating meat, that can become an issue all of a sudden. Right.
Yeah. It sounds like you really need to know yourself too, because say, for example, like me, for example, I really love to drink, but I don't drink very much at all. And so put me next to somebody who can drink 10 times or more, literally, as much as me. And that's quite a difference in cost, really, to me in the end.
Especially when it comes to drinking. Something else as well that, there's a lot of people who are lovely people, absolutely lovely people, the nicest people, and then they have a few drinks and they turn into downright assholes. You just don't want to have to deal with this. Am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah. Yep, it's okay.
All right. I hope I'm not downgrading your
attitude. That anyway.
Okay, anyway, I'm sure you can beep it later. But anyway, so, you just want to make sure that those who you bring along, if it's going to involve a bit of partying, which it generally does at some point on the trip, you're not going to end up with someone who's just going to be downright awkward, creepy, or just a really difficult person to deal with. The last thing you want is fights or people feeling uncomfortable on a boat. Yeah. That's one thing I always try to avoid. Bring the happy drunks, the ones that just make a fool out of themselves, and then everyone else can laugh about it. We can talk about it forever. And God bless, we've had so many of these over the years. It's so much fun. They really add to the party, yeah. Often at their own expense. But we've forgotten people on islands. We've had someone who slept with a jellyfish biting his scrotum up his. Yeah. He went night swimming and complained that his bum was hurting afterwards, and we couldn't figure out why. And in the end, we just took him back to the boat and put him to bed. Next day, he goes to the toilet, drops his boardies, and this jellyfish comes out. It's dead by that point. Harley still carries that scar on, he says. But yeah, you want these kinds of people. These are the soul of the party. Just make sure you know your crew. Make sure you absolutely know who you're inviting along, and then do a little bit of research on the local costs, especially when it comes to mooring fees. And that doesn't just include the ports. Spain, for example, is notorious for having a lot of national parks that are out in the middle of nowhere, like this bay, and all of a sudden there'll be a motorboat that comes up to you and says, "Oh, you haven't booked for the night. Sorry, you got to go." Or it's 60 or 80 euros to drop anchor in this bay, and people who don't know would take this for granted. That I'm out in nature. Surely no one's going to come and request to pay. Croatia is the same. In fact, a lot of times you'll have the local mafia run boats around there, and people banging on your hull about an hour before sunset, demanding mooring fees that don't even exist. And
what do you do?
What are you going to do? You're going to start, yeah. So look, there's always, with boating, unfortunately, you're always at the mercy of the facilities that are
pirates.
Unless you're planning on circumnavigating the globe or taking a holiday near Somalia or something like that, you'll be fine. There's no the only pirates you'll come across are a bunch of drunken Scandinavians who probably want to board your boat and say hi. It's fine. It's no problem. These are always welcome. No, I think any such instance like pirates, robberies, and all sorts of things like that are very, extremely rare to almost non-existent in at least in the safe places.
So do you just pay off the mafia?
When I say mafia, don't think of, you're not going to get an armed escort kind of coming over and demanding money. It doesn't work. It's just, everyone's going to make a living around there, and they've all figured out their own little ways of doing it.
So yes, you pay off the mafia.
You pay some dude, and if you don't, there'll be trouble.
Ooh,
But
okay.
you'll never know about this because you'll pay.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it's not always. It might be actual marine park fees and so on. But I've heard of stories where even some skippers themselves, they'll drop anchor somewhere and say, oh yeah, there's a mooring fee here. It's like it's €80 for the night. It's like, okay, well, you don't know any better. You'll pay the skipper some money and. You've done your bit and you continue on with your holiday. And it turns out there's no fees whatsoever in that area. And the guys just pocketed the money and gone away. So, little things like that can happen. But what holiday doesn't involve a certain amount of,
mishaps
of being a sucker to some elaborate scam.
Right.
But generally sailing is you have a lot of the trip under your own control. And especially if you've got a local skipper, most of these guys are fantastic. They're great. They'll look after you and you'll be more than fine.
You make it sound so fun, really.
It is. It's a fun holiday. It's one of those holidays where you don't just sit on the deck of the boat cooking under the sun, drinking, eating yourself to sleep and waking up and realizing, oh shit, my week is over. This is one of those holidays where you actively participate in the journey. It's more about the journey than the destination. And I know this sounds like such a cliche, but it's nowhere more true than this type of holiday. And it's also, it has to be because sailing boats are inherently slower than motorboats. You can't operate on a schedule such as, I've really got to go to this island by a certain time and we've got to go there.
Right.
Or it's the middle of the night, I don't like this place, let's move on to the next island. No, sailing boats are all about the journey. They go slower. You're enjoying what you have around you. You have the engine turned off, and you just enjoy the sea, the breeze, and the splashing water, and whatever else. Your chit chat. It's all about getting to know each other, and you'll spend a lot. That's the biggest reason why I'm still doing these trips.
Yeah.
I don't do anything like this commercially. I don't profit from what I'm doing. It's purely for me and my friends, and in fact, I'm doing everything I can to try and keep these trips as cheap as possible. The guys I'm renting the boats from. I'm sure they're not too happy about me trying to bargain the price down all the time, but it's so that I can actually catch up with friends of mine from around the world and do it in a quality way. You get to spend a lot of quality time with your friends, and this is the biggest reason why you should go on a sailing trip. One question you may ask is, well, what if I don't have 6 to 8 friends to come along? And thankfully, especially again now with social media, there's and being able to organize people through platforms like Facebook and TripAdvisor and all these other platforms, is that you can actually now join a lot easier these holidays as just a single passenger along with others that you've never met before. There's obviously a risk there in that you're joining a crew of people that you've no idea what they're going to be like. But generally, unless you realize that this trip has a specific purpose, and there are those kinds of trips, I'm sure there's anything from sex tourism to booze cruises to you name it out there. But unless you're going for something that you'll know as the trip is getting prepared, you'll know what sort of holiday you're getting into. There's a lot of companies out there that organize trips that are geared towards the single traveler, or they don't oblige you to fill the boat. They'll just say, look, we've got this boat's going out on these dates. If you're happy to come along, then pay, and don't worry about filling the boat. We'll take care of that. Loads of these companies out there. So you'll be able to do a trip like that absolutely without any problem whatsoever. The Whitsundays is a classic example where it's pretty much the de facto way of traveling. So you turn up, pay, and you join a big maxi yacht, and you're out with a bunch of unknowns.
So you could, for example, could you show up to Croatia and maybe hop on a boat?
Absolutely. Same way that you can show up in Punta Arenas or other places, go to Antarctica on a research vessel where you've met no one else before, and it's kind of a cruise. You definitely can as well. The one thing that you need to research beforehand is what this trip gives you. Is it an actual sailing holiday, or is it a holiday on a boat that just moves from point A to point B without ever raising a sail? And do you care?
Right. And do you care? That's important.
Yeah. I mean, if all you want to do is be on a boat and jump off into the water, then you may be okay with an ordinary boat. Those might even be cheaper. I mean, for me, a sailing holiday is a sailing holiday. It has to involve a certain amount of sailing every day. It has to be on an actual boat that sails. And it has to be, it has to fit that kind of traditional sailing. But yes, absolutely. So it is entirely possible to travel as a single person or as a couple. You'll have to share in most cases. So you'll probably have to share a bed. A bed even, double bed in a cabin with someone else. But I think nearly everyone organized. Yes. So
a bed? Wait, what? Really?
Yep. So I should say this now. Sailing boats are not, hotels. They are what they are. In fact, the vast majority of sailing boats that you'll find out there that you can charter are the same exact sailing boats that you'd buy if you were buying a family boat that you just want to have for you and your family. So they'll have cabins, which usually have more often double beds. So there'll be a wide mattress that accommodates 2 people. Some cabins in bigger boats will have 3 beds, where one it will be a double bed. So sorry, they'll be able to accommodate three people in a cabin, where 2 people sleep on the double bed and then one above them in a bunk bed, staring down on them. And then in some of the boats, you'll have a bunk bed arrangement, which is more preferable for some.
Yeah, that's what mine was when I did it. It was like
when I organize
tiny bunk beds.
Of course, absolutely, yeah. I mean, these are preferable, but the vast majority of sailing boats that are out there for charters are of the double and triple bed variety.
So close quarters.
Yeah, definitely. And you get to know the people very, very well. There's zero privacy in these boats. Everyone knows when you go to the toilet. Everyone knows when you've had a bit of fun with another member of the crew. There's absolutely no privacy whatsoever. Just prepare to be out there. The facilities inside the boat generally are, you'll have a kitchen, you'll have at least a couple of hot water showers and toilets. And in the bigger boats, you might have a shower and a toilet in every single cabin. But space is limited. Space is definitely limited. Don't go there expecting, don't drag some massive suitcase on the boat. Everyone will hate you because there'll be no place to put it. Bring the essentials,
My listeners know better than that, right, guys?
I'm sure you're an absolute expert at that. There's no question. You can probably get by with a little tiny box. But
yeah, all you really need on a sailing trip, all you need is a swimsuit.
We've had a girl bring hair straighteners on a boat once. We've had someone else bring a hairdryer and an iron. So you'll be surprised at what people have carried on the boat before. And you've seen me travel. I tend to carry more gadgets than anyone would like to carry, but at least these ones you kind of utilize in a more meaningful way than the hairdryer. The one thing you have to remember about the sailing trip in a warm country, emphasize, is that most of the time, and the whole purpose of this is that you're close to the water. So you'll be jumping on and off this boat, or hopefully you'll be jumping on and off this boat very, very frequently. So really what you want is your swimming trunks or your bikinis or whatever you want to call them, and your, your lightweight clothes for the evening, which shouldn't really be too heavy or too complicated either.
Dresses are great for that. For girls, dresses, you can throw them right over a swimsuit. They're super awesome for sailboats.
Yeah, the whole island kind of culture around there operates around that principle. No one's going to be wandering around in,
jeans.
Posh jeans. Oh my God, no, you'd be dying, especially in Greece. But even most of Europe, no way. So come prepared. Bring a fleece maybe, just in case it gets a bit nippy at night, or a shell jacket or something. But generally, you need very few clothes. And you'll find that you keep recycling them because you can't be bothered going down and take something else.
Definitely. That's what I say all the time. And on these hiking trips that I do, you end up wearing the same clothes every day. And it's so true. And no one cares. No one cares.
Plus, it's not just you in the cabin. It's going to be another person. So if you both start opening your bag or suitcase or whatever and start taking things out, it's going to turn into a royal mess in there.
Yeah.
And sailing boats tend to kind of list towards either one side. So as you're sailing, the boat will be throwing things everywhere. So you'll come back and you'll find your underwear in someone else's suitcase for all the wrong reasons. And yeah, just don't. Like, travel very lightweight and try to enjoy yourself. Don't be too concerned about what you're wearing. It's fine. It's one of those trips that's very different. It's one of those holidays that's very, very different to traditional beach holiday or traditional warm weather holiday.
Yeah, it sounds so fun though. I can see why it would be addicting. I mean, as long as, you enjoy yourself. Like,
you know what? The best part about this is that you wake up in a different place every single day. You've got a constant change of scenery. And actually, speaking about the cost, on an average sailing holiday in Greece, you'd be visiting between 4 to 7 islands if you really want to do this. Maybe 7 is too much, but between 4 to 6 islands easily. Going between these islands normally, just booking hotels in every single one place, buying the ferry tickets between them, will easily run you over, could easily run to twice that expense. So it's actually a cheap way of getting around and seeing the islands. And you could spend an entire week on the same one island and never see the same place twice. So there's a lot to see out there. You can keep, we've been going back to the same spots as a rule of thumb, I try to get back to the same place every 4 years and just rotate to kind of keep a little bit of variety. And I've been doing this now for almost 20 years, and we still come across new places, and we're still impressed by new spots we discover, new things we see. So, and that applies worldwide. I mean, I live in Malta. Malta is a bit of a different story because for anyone who knows where this place is, it's a tiny speck of a rock in the middle of the sea. There aren't really that many places. Once you've done it once or twice on a boat, you more or less know exactly where you're going. But, the Greek coastline is enormous. Croatia, again, same. Turkey has a very long coastline. Never been to the Virgin Islands, but I'm sure it's the same there. You have so much choice and so many safe harbors and natural harbors where you can drop anchor in the middle of the night and sleep under the stars. And that's the other thing. Depending on where you go, obviously the geography changes and the distribution of towns and villages across islands changes. But again, I'm going to use the example of Greece. You have the luxury of doing one in, one out. So one day, visit the town, go out and have a few drinks out in town and eat at the taverna, and then the next day go out to the middle of absolute nowhere on a deserted island. It's you and some goats if you're lucky, or no one. Oh. And you got the whole island to yourself. You can have a barbecue and really enjoy yourself, and there'll be no one else around you for miles. So you have this contrast that you can squeeze within a week very easily.
I think I'm gonna have to try this one day. For real.
It would be an absolute pleasure. I'll be very careful where I put you because a few of my friends tend to like a drink. But we're going to try to think of the more civilized of the lot and put you together with them and make sure you survive it. It's going to be fine. There's one question that people may have, which is, and I think you should try and think about it a little bit, but not too much. And I get this question often, which is, okay, what about seasickness? Is it going to be a factor? And it's a major question mark in people's heads. And I can tell you now, there's nothing worse than getting seasick on a holiday, which is all about boating. There's nowhere to run. You have to wait until you get there, and you're stuck. You're stuck with this for a week. And if you're not able to manage, I've had people come off the boat in the past and just continue their holiday on land or just stay on one island. Now, these were extreme cases. I know they were extreme cases, and I don't tend to kind of think of it as a real issue. Yes, you might get seasick on the odd day where the sea was a little bit choppy. The skippers, and if you are a skipper yourself, you should know this, will not generally venture out if the sea is either dangerous or if it's uncomfortable. There's no fun in going out and everyone throwing up. That's not a fun trip in anyone's book. So if you see that the weather is turning bad, you just stay in the harbor and you're fine. Obviously, you've got to progress in your journey. You've got to go from point A to point B so you can get back to your origin and return the boat. So eventually you might have to expose yourself to bad weather or uncomfortable weather, I should say. Mm-hmm. But generally, you wouldn't go sailing in the Caribbean during hurricane season.
Right.
And the same applies everywhere else. You wouldn't want to be visiting Italy in the middle of February to have a nice day up the Sicilian coast. So, you'll try and pick the safe days and you'll try to minimize exposure to the elements to the point where it would make the passengers uncomfortable. But you can and maybe will get seasick one day on the boat. And it's okay. It's fine. The journeys, the legs between the different islands shouldn't be too long. 1 or 2 hours. You'll survive. There are loads and loads of tricks that work to varying degrees for different people on how to avoid becoming seasick. One of those is to eat loads of sweets before you start. The other one is not to go out with a very full stomach, but not to go out with an empty one either. Eat an hour or so before you go sailing, or possibly a little longer. There's all these bracelets. I've heard the one sea bands. Yes, there's the stickers. There's prayers. I'm sure. There's another one which is sticking an earplug into one of your ears only and then leaving the other one open. Huh. Apparently that works. I personally have only gotten seasick once in my life before. And that was very recently because I absolutely stuffed myself with Greek food and then went out hard sailing.
Which might happen.
And it might happen, and the food is too tempting. But try to keep it civilized until the evening where you're safe in the marina. There's pills. There's Dramamine, which tends to work. There's vertigo pills that apparently do. Look, you'll never know unless you try. And like with every other holiday that involves nature, you have to take it, a bit of a challenge. And if this is the only challenge you face on this trip, so be it. There's far worse things that can happen. So just you'll be.
That's really good advice, though. Just suck it up and try it because you're not going to know how it's going to end up for you unless you...
And more often than not, we tend to focus on the worst. I mean, I'm sure if you look on YouTube, seasickness, you'll probably find some absolute horrors, but generally you'll be fine.
Don't look that up on YouTube. It's a terrible idea.
You won't actually wake up with a terrible hangover, which will be all entirely your fault, than anything else really. And you'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah. Yay. Well, cool. This has been so good. I feel like you've given us so much information and answered so many questions. And I tell you what, I bet there's going to be a lot of people out there really wishing they could go sailing right now, because
it's always a pleasure to talk about it, and it's always a pleasure seeing more and more people out at sea. It used to be that you'd see either the families or the older people who've retired and are taking boats out. It's starting to become so that you start seeing more and more young people out there, and also people that are on budget can still get away with it and do it, which is, there's no excuse. It's one of the cheapest and nicest holidays you can do, actually.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
You've shown us. That's amazing.
Hopefully we'll have you on board as well at some point.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate all of this. Stories, knowledge, all of that. Super.
So lovely to talk to you. And see you out there at sea.
Yeah, I hope so.
It's not just the mountains.
I know. All right, cool. Thank you so much, and have fun on your next adventure this summer, the one that you have coming up.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much. I hope we don't lose anyone. Cheers.
So Costas and I recorded this interview a couple months ago. I was in Germany at the time, getting ready to go to Jordan, but now it's summer in the States, and that sailing trip is sounding even more appealing. I think that one of these days I'm really going to have to go on a proper sailing trip myself and see just how good it really is. And I wonder, have you done a sailing trip before? Please leave a comment on the show notes page and tell us what you think of it, or if you have any more tips to add. You can find the show notes page at thebudgetmindedtraveler.com/93. Once again, shout out to our sponsor, biketours.com. Their tour advisors are ready to help with any questions you may have as you explore over 200 European bike tours that they offer. I've done 2 cycling tours through them myself so far, the first bike tours I've ever done, ever. And I can now say confidently that cycle touring is such an incredible way to travel, especially if you like being active. Check out biketours.com to view tours, or go to travelingjackie.com/bike tours to learn more about my personal experiences cycling with them. Thanks again to Costas for sharing with us this super helpful information about how to plan a sailing trip. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in today, and I'll see you guys next time.